What's up, guys? John Cristana here. So this year I was invited to speak at Burning Man on that stage right over there about the future of education. Now, for those of you who don't know what Burning Man is, it's a really cool arts and culture festival. There's lots of cool sculptures, great DJs, weird community events. It's held in the middle of the desert. I mean, it's ridiculous out. It's a total whiteout right now. And it's known for attracting, people such as celebrities such as Paris Hilton, Katy Perry attended last year, to tech billionaires such as Elon Musk and, the best artists in all of the world. So I'm gonna go talk in just a second about the future of education. Hope you enjoy this speech I've been invited to give out here. There's 75,000 people out here. Very excited to talk about this subject and enjoy. So I'm absolutely crazy passionate about education, and this talk is going to be all about, I feel like education is one of those areas of society that we've taken for granted for so long and really not taken any hard amount of looking into how we can really disrupt this field and how we can evolve it to be more efficient and more future focused to help people all around the world rather than just, privileged people who can go to, the modern schooling system. So by trade, I'm a educator. I have thousands of students all around the globe. And I've been doing this for years. What this talk is going to revolve around is I'm going to go over briefly kind of the history as I see it of education, which is really nuts. It's really hard to find like the history of the education system and how it evolved to get to its modern state. So I'll discuss that, and then I'll go into a number of science fiction authors, like The Matrix, where they plug you in and stuff. But I'll go in a couple different ideas of what the future of education may look like and skill building. So yeah. So first off, I started digging into the history of education because I always like to, like Elon Musk says, he says, let's go back and look at first principles. Let's look at what things were in their original form. And I really love Burning Man because I believe we're really returning to human nature. And that was my intention this year, is getting back to human nature. So I've taken a lot of time to kind of dive into what the past of education looked like. And if you look at the past of education, you see a very, what I call a decentralized, to use a hip term, more decentralized model of education. You have guys like Socrates. I did not name myself, by the way. I got my playa name like 4 years ago. But you got guys like Socrates or Jesus or whatever that are speaking in squares, yelling about, ranting about stuff, and people choose to follow them. You also, on the other side of the coin of education, you have, apprenticeships, people saying, hey, you can, you look like a young, dapper chap, you can build ships. I'll let you work for me for free for 2 years and maybe pay you some money or whatever eventually. So that was around what I call like 0 AD, like 2,000 years ago. And but very informal back then. You zoom up about 1,000 years and you have the creation of the first universities. The first universities were generally, there was one university per kind of language center. So you have Paris, you have Cambridge, you have Bologna in Italy, I think you have Leipzig in Germany, and basically all of the people that spoke a certain sort of language, dialect thing, the rich people would send their kids to this university and they say, hey, here's, 10,000 bucks, go to the university. And there was generally a kind of a time period in these universities where the students would go off to Leipzig or Paris or whatever, and there'd be a university center, and essentially teachers would like pitch them. There'd be like, hey, you should learn to read and write, and become a priest. Or hey, you should learn how to do weights and measurements and become an accountant or tax whatever, So you have all these different people that are basically these teachers, and people would select a teacher after being pitched for a week or two, sitting in on different classes. So very, very, a little more somewhat self-directed and somewhat similar to what our system is now. The teachers formed unions, essentially, and that's how the universities came about. And then you zoom forward, but it was only rich kids. It was like really only rich kids at this point that were able to do this. Then you zoom up about 800 years and it starts getting a little bit more interesting. You have, okay, cool. You have the Germans, or the Austria-Hungary Empire. They lost to Napoleon and they're like, what the fuck is this shit? Or no, sorry, that's a French accent. They're like, Scheiße, Scheiße, and they said, the leaders of the Austria-Hungary Empire, the Prussians or whatever it was, they chalked up their loss to the fact that they had all these hundreds of different kingdoms and fiefdoms that didn't speak the same dialect, and people weren't working well together, and people had their own loyalties to their own, camps or tribes or whatever. So what they said was, we need everybody on the same wavelength. We need everybody to have the same basic level of understanding and the same loyalty and speak the same dialect of German across the board. And you start getting the modern German Empire, but you also get what's mandatory universal education, very similar to what we have today. So everybody has to go to school no matter what. That was a big deal back then. It had never been like this. And from the age of kindergarten, kindergarten means, something like child garden in German or something. But so you have mandatory education, which was a big deal, and you also have age segregation, to keep things orderly. The Germans like things orderly, and everybody speaks the same dialect. And what happened was you actually get it worked. It worked really well. In fact, it worked too well. Germany became like they really took advantage of the Industrial Revolution on a great scale. They educated their society, but obviously you also got the Nazis. So, which is, kind of sucks. But the education system worked really well, and around the mid-1800s, America we were having the same problems at the time of, we had the North and the South, and then, California's doing its weird thing over there, trying to break away. Texas is doing its weird thing. Utah Territory is, these Mormons are trying to, have bunches of wives and be their own country. So you have all these different things, and America was like, okay, let's figure this shit out. Let's send a delegation to Germany. And it was this guy named Horace Mann, who led the delegation for Americans to go to Germany, and they're like, this is working out pretty well. They're kind of like, they're getting all these disparate, crazy German tribes, fiefdoms working well together. So we adopted the same system, and it's obviously worked very well for industrialization, having this mandatory education and, the collegiate structure as well. And I think personally, but I think in our modern day society, we're seeing a lot of problems from, education is the skills that are taught in our education system. I'm not going to go into all the student loan problems and the fact that, a degree no longer amounts to getting any further ahead. I'm an employer as well, and I never look at people's degrees. It doesn't matter anymore. All it says is that you had the socioeconomic means to go to college. I'm not impressed by that. But what does matter in today's society are skills. So college is getting less and less. It's got to change. It hasn't adapted. There's huge problems. We've got to find another way. I think it's a $1 trillion plus thing, and nobody's talking about it. Everybody's trying to create another social network or another Bitcoin or another, financial instrument or social network to suck your attention. Whereas I believe skills, the seeking of enlightenment, the seeking accelerating our knowledge is probably the most justified cause that we can possibly have in today's society. And I believe really the point of this conversation of this is to hopefully spark discussion, conversation, and innovation in progressing education. So back to the thing. So we adopted the thing. I believe we need to transition. I believe 2000, this millennia is a time for transitioning to a new system. Some of the future visions for education that I've seen, and I want to spark a discussion, hopefully. A few things that are interesting from science fiction authors. So for those of you who have seen The Matrix, or who have read the book by Vernor Vinge, Rainbow's End. I'm a sci-fi junkie. There's this concept of, in Vernor Vinge's Rainbow's End, they call it JIT, or just-in-time training. And in the book, there's problems with having too much just-in-time training. People get PTSD-like symptoms. And this is similar to in The Matrix. You see this concept of people plugging in and jacking in, and they're like, I know Kung Fu. And it's like, you basically are downloading skills, and this is an interesting idea. Elon Musk is working on like neural mesh, and so that's an interesting idea, kind of like faster ways of downloading information, a more efficient way of transmitting skills into our brain. Another future vision of education, notice I'm jumping ahead like 50 years in like these ideas for education, but I'd prefer to let the science fiction authors do the work because they're more creative than I am. Ready Player One, for those of you who have read the book, not seen the movie, I don't know, the movie butchered a lot of the plot, if you ask me. And also The Matrix, you have this concept of VR education, but Ready Player One does it very well on this planet, Ludus. It's an education planet. All the students go to university on Ludus, and they're learning in virtual reality, and you have access to the best teachers. In Neil Stephenson's The Diamond Age, or A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer, you have this concept of AI-assisted, an educational like AI assistant. It's a book. That's the Young Lady's Illustrated Primer. It's an AI assistant that helps you out with whatever you need to learn, or guiding you, whatever you want to do at the time. It's like Google times, like Google meets life coach almost. It's like times 100. In Daniel Suarez's book, and people can give a whoop whoop if anybody knows or likes these books. I'm really a big fan of these books. In Daniel Suarez's book, Damon, you have this concept of AR education. So you have factory workers or people that they don't need to learn skills. They just have a heads-up display which tells them what to do and when to do it. Drag this, move this over here, put the light bulb in the socket here, twist. And another interesting concept throughout many of these books is that you also have many more almost like cult-like figures throughout many of these books. You have people choosing where they go to learn rather than having it pushed upon them in some of these utopian or dystopian societies. So you have a lot of different those are some models of what the future is. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk. I hope you guys, especially this guy right here, gets excited about well, maybe not that guy, but gets excited about education. Sorry, I was making fun of you. If there are any questions, I hope you guys enjoy this talk.
Right now, I feel that there is a lot of people that seeing that there's a huge problem in education, but I feel like the whole branding of education is somewhat now, it's very much like, if you tell a child, oh, here's a beautiful tool, and it's branded as educational. Now the child will look at it and be like, oh, I should only do this in an education setting. So I'm trying to see what is the best approach to sort of enter the education market. What do you see, not market, educational field? What do you see as the most lacking part of education right now that people should target, people should kind of create solutions for?
What is the most lacking area of education right now? That's your question. I That's a good question. Well, I'll speak from personal experience, and kind of what I do is I'm a YouTuber, and I think YouTube is one of the most untapped places for education, period. So many people are going to get their education from YouTube now in short form videos that are 5 to 15 minutes, and and for a lot of software programs or technical skills, or let's say you want to program, different like chatbots or AI things, there's so much opportunity there. And I know so many people getting into that field who are, also YouTubers. I think that's, and that's my business. I think that is a huge opportunity area, and it's where people are naturally going. So, and it's easy to get into. I don't know, that's my take.
Do you think that education institutions will start to employ people that they've educated?
Are you talking about that? But they do. I mean, most professors generally start out. Yeah.
I mean, like, for example, there's lots of coding routines, but they never employ the coders. They replace the coders. Theoretically, they could employ them.
So like, you're talking about, will educational institutions get more vertically integrated and start leveraging like the talent that they have and growing, becoming software development companies? And so great question. You see some things like this happen. First of all, I think being specialized in something very specific is generally the way to go. But you kind of see stuff like this happening. Like if you've ever logged on to Udacity, you will see that a lot of the courses are sponsored by, they're different programming-esque courses, but they're Have you logged on to Udacity? Well, that's it. That's it. That's it right there. You have courses sponsored by Google. Google sponsored Swift programming. You have, Adobe, you have NVIDIA sponsors, machine learning programs. So they're training, they're working with a partner to train people, which they are directly trying to hire. It's a direct, they're using these companies as feeder tools. I personally believe, this is sort of offshoot, but I don't think the change is coming from the university, the government system. I think it's just very slow to move. I mean, they're still giving kids textbooks, which seems kind of ridiculous. And I don't know if any of you have heard of the online company Masterclass, where you can learn tennis from Serena Williams. You can, Steven Spielberg teaches filmmaking. You have John Leguizamo teaching comedy. Or no, sorry, Steve Buscemi, even better. And so you have all of these, you have Frank Gehry teaching architecture. And I believe a lot of these things are going to move towards, I don't think the universities are going to, why have 10, 20,000 film teachers when you can go through a course that's 80% led by Steven Spielberg and 20% personal attention from TAs that are trained by Steven Spielberg or whatever. I believe we're moving more towards a model of people are going to be choosing to work with highly successful people in their given fields, first and foremost, and I think it's coming from outside the education system. So I think Udacity is really smart in this field. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool.
that's the time we have.
Okay.
For today, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Education.
Thank you, guys. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.